Jason made one last wave towards the doorway of the house before getting into his car. The house was a very large and impressive Tudor manor, complete with moat and bridge. It didn't belong to him or to any of his friends, but it was his friends who had hired it out that day for a routine get-together. As he prepared to leave, he switched on his headlights and flooded the front of the house with light. Putting the car into reverse, he waved at his friends in a manically over-the-top sort of way before regaining control of the steering wheel and composing himself for a serious journey home. It was a dark night in late October. The sun had gone down many hours before, and the stars shone in the clear, inky black sky. But the moon was a new one, and as he reached the end of the driveway, he slowed down and looked left to right into the dark abyss of the main road. Jason made a very hesitant move to finally pull out from the driveway, and in doing so, he decided to switch on his full-beam headlights. He hated this. He hated the challenge of driving almost blind down the winding country roads. Yet despite this, there was an almost enchanting feeling of seeing the rows of trees and hedges appear out of the void and past the car. The illusion was only broken by the occasional gap in the trees where more black void was visible. Eventually, he came to a junction where he made his turn. He was going a good 10 miles slower than the speed limit when suddenly out of the darkness appeared a man standing in the middle of the road, arms outstretched and waving slightly. Jason panicked and slammed down the brakes and swerved a little onto the side. The sudden shock had thrown him into an almost paralysed position at the wheel. He was unable to move. His head spun with many thoughts of the situation. Where did he come from? Do I keep going? Did I hit him? Should I go out and check? His thoughts were broken when he heard a tap at the window. "Hey, can I get a lift?" a voice asked. He turned his head slowly. His inner voice was telling him not to. He looked out to see the man standing outside his window. "Can I get a lift?" the man asked again. "What do you think you're playing at?" he replied. "I almost hit you." "I was only wondering if I could get a lift." Jason examined the man. He had a young face with long wavy hair down to his shoulders and a very retro-looking moustache. Jason thought long and hard about this mysterious hitchhiker. He didn't want to allow this stranger into his car, yet the longer he thought about it, the more awkward the situation became. Jason was about to refuse the hitchhiker when suddenly he noticed him smiling. It was kind of reassuring and had the bizarre effect of instantly changing his mind. "Sure, hop in," he said rather unwillingly. "Thank you," replied the hitchhiker as he opened the door. He clambered into the back of the car and edged himself along the middle seat. "Clunk-click every trip," he said as he fastened his seatbelt. Jason began to drive off. His feeling of tension resulted in some very sharp and uncomfortable gear changes, but eventually he settled down. "So, where are you off to?" "Oh, here and there." He began to rummage in a large and rather old and battered leather satchel. He pulled out a map and began to unfold it. "It's not really the best time of year to be out and about this late at night, especially not on foot." The hitchhiker didn't answer. Instead, he continued to study his map. Not much happened for the next couple of 100 yards, then suddenly he spoke up. "Was that Cutthroat Lane we were just at?" A cold chill fell over Jason. "Yes, I think it was." Jason was fully aware of a road named Cutthroat Lane, but hearing it read out loud on a dark autumn night by a complete stranger in the closed, confined space of his car filled him with dread. Feeling the worst about the situation, he tried to humour the hitchhiker. "Where'd a road get a name like that, eh?" "Yeah, it's not very reassuring, is it?" Jason's mind was now racing again. Many tropes for a campfire horror story were now coming together in his situation. He needed to get out, but he just couldn't. Could his hitchhiker be a murderer? The answer seemed just as likely as it was unlikely. He needed to bide his time. He needed to probe his guest for more information. I guess something nasty might have happened here. A long time ago, mind." He waited for a reply. "You always hear of these kind of stories about people driving along country roads. How about that one with the woman being followed by the lorry?" Again, no reply. Either his hitchhiker was playing a game with him, or he was genuinely studying his map. Jason wanted to strike up a conversation to try and reassure himself, but with all attempts fading, he returned to silently driving. A few 100 yards later, an idea came to him. "I can drop you off near the town centre when we get there." "Yes, that'll do." Jason almost let out a huge sigh of relief. A clear escape now lay a few miles before him. He just had to simply reach town and he could say goodbye to his traveller. By now, he had put away his map and now sat forward in his seat, watching alongside Jason. It's quite an unnerving sight. What is? Driving at night, only being able to see so far into the distance. Anything could be out there. A sense of foreboding fell upon Jason. "We should be there soon. Coming up to the A345. There was an uneasy moment of silence. "Except me." Alarm bells rang in Jason's head. Whatever his hitchhiker was playing at, he was now making his move. He slammed on the brakes and quickly turned to confront him, but to his surprise he had gone, vanished into thin air. He turned back before turning around again just to be sure. The hitchhiker had gone, leaving no trace of his presence in the back seat of the car. Slightly unnerved, he switched off the engine and got out, leaving the lights on. He set about searching around his car for any trace of the man, but found nothing. He got back into his car and sunk his head into his hands. He closed his eyes and exhaled. He eventually managed to pull away and resume his journey. He wouldn't sleep easy tonight. As he neared the end of the road, he thought about the last words he'd heard the hitchhiker say. "Except me." He wondered what he had meant by that, but then he came to the uneasy conclusion that he had tried to hitch a ride many times, but never got to the end of that particular road, as he had died there. Suddenly, upon reaching this conclusion, Jason felt a sharp stabbing pain along his throat. He gagged as if something was pressing into him, choking him. He swerved about, trying to keep his car under control. Everything began to fade to black. Everything seemed to be fading away, his thoughts, his memories. He could make out a faint thud, which soon passed into silence. But then, the black void began to illuminate with a shining blue light. Ages passed as the blue light faded into red and back again. As time went by, the flashing lights began to switch quicker and quicker until he finally realised what was happening. He was being pulled from his car and being taken into an ambulance. As his vision cleared, he could see out onto the bleak road, and there, standing almost out of sight, was the hitchhiker. As the paramedic slammed the doors, he caught a brief glimpse of another figure coming from behind him.